Hello, English 102 students. I wanted to go over the sample paper that you all read last week and commented on in our discussions. I've replied to each of you, and I hope that you've read a lot of the posts and replies. I just want to emphasize a few things about this paper that I want you to be aware of as you write. First of all, just some basic format things. I'm not typically too picky about things like headings. But this, for what it's worth, is what the heading should look like. Your paper should have an original title. It doesn't have to be your research question. And you should number your pages, but if your word processing program is giving you a hard time, I'm not worried about that at all. Do double space your paper and indent each new paragraph instead of leaving extra space between paragraphs. That makes it much easier for me to see where your paragraphs end and begin. Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, the source use. You noticed that I color-coded the student sources. Please don't do that yourself. That's just something I did in this video, or in this sample, to make it a little bit easier to notice the student source use. So every time Harris Cooper is used, that's highlighted in yellow. Every time Maltese tie and fan are used, that's highlighted in this pink mauve color, and then this third source, Graham, is highlighted in green. You can see that each one of these sources can be traced to the works cited list. So what's cited in the paper corresponds exactly with what's in the works cited list, and that's really, really important. For your first exploratory essay, I'm not going to be super picky at all about how you cite your sources on your works cited list. Some of you might know APA form better. What's most important for me is that you get the sources there with enough information that I can tell something about what kind of source it is. You can see they're listed in alphabetical order. That's really all I'm concerned about for now. It should be on the last page of your essay. All right, so another thing that I really like about the way that this writer uses sources is that the amount of quotation is not overwhelming. So if we were to highlight only the quotations itself, you would see that the quotations are a relatively small part of each paragraph. It can be really tempting to just load your research paper filled with great quotations that you find. So one of your challenges will be to keep the quotations short and concise. Look at this passage here where there's a lot of great information from this source by these three authors, Maltese, Ty, and Fan, but this writer is paraphrasing. This writer is taking that information and putting it into her own words. And remember, when you paraphrase, it's entirely your own words and your own sentence structures. You really have to understand the passage well enough to completely paraphrase it originally with the citation at the end. So because she's using a combination of quotation and paraphrase, she's got a lot of good research in her paper, but the quotation isn't taking over her voice. Her own voice and her own words are the dominating thing in the essay. So that's really great. Look at this example of keeping the quotation especially short. Whoops. So that again, we aren't getting overwhelmed with somebody else's words, but we are still getting the research. All right. Another thing that many of you noticed about this essay is that she does a really good job of pointing out who her sources are. Psychology professor. Okay, so now we know why we should pay attention to Harris Cooper. So when you know your sources' credentials, and remember, part of what I'm asking you to do in your research is to be very aware of who's writing your sources and what their qualifications are. When you know the sources' credentials, then point them out, because when your sources look good, you look good. When your sources look credible, you're going to be more credible. Okay? She always has what we call a quotation sandwich. She leads into the quotation with her own words, and then she follows up to explain the quotation and how it connects to her point. There are no drop-in, hit-and-run quotations that are just sort of plopped down into the middle of the paragraph. They are all really smoothly integrated with her own ideas. So these are all things that I would like you to do in your essays as well. A final thing about sources is that notice how she's using multiple sources in a paragraph to help make the same point. Okay, so this whole paragraph is about the age of the students and the effectiveness of homework. So she's got information from all sources about that idea. In the next paragraph, she's got information from two different sources about this idea of type and quantity of homework. So what you definitely should not do is simply summarize one source at a time. Instead, you should be deducing from your research what the main ideas are and organizing accordingly. So as long as we're talking about organization, let's talk about the structure. You might notice that this essay has 5 paragraphs, which is fine, but it's not your standard repetitive 5 paragraph formula. The second reason is she's being more sophisticated than that in how she structures the essay. There is no formula for you to follow for the structure for this paper. You figure out what you want to say and you structure it accordingly as long as it meets the course requirements. So one easy structure would be some background, a paragraph or two about one side of the debate, a paragraph or two about the other side of the debate, some discussion of what could be researched in the future. That could be in its own body paragraph, or it could be part of your conclusion, right? So figure out the number of paragraphs you need so that your paragraphs stay focused on one specific point. She does that well. Also, some of you noticed that she's got super clear topic sentences at the beginnings of her paragraph so that readers know what the paragraph is going to be about and we can follow along. And she also does a really good job of using return sentences at the ends of paragraphs where she wraps up the point. And so again, we can follow along really well. And then look at these really nice transitions. This paragraph up here is about the age of students, and then so she uses this transition. Besides the age of students, it is also key to look at the type and quantity of homework. So notice how she's using this really smooth transition to lead us from one idea to the other. This is a very reader-friendly paper. She's doing a lot of careful work to help guide us through the paper so that we don't have to struggle to follow her. And I also like her conclusion. Conclusions are hard. She does use a quotation in her conclusion that kind of wraps things up, but you don't have to do that. I like the way that she talks about implications for going forward, and that could be a possible strategy you use in your conclusion too. Okay, there's lots more to talk about in this paper, the really clear sentences, the confident tone that kind of reassures us that she knows what she's talking about and that she's done her research. All of these things help to create a successful exploratory essay. If you have any other questions, be sure to let me know. And if you haven't already read all of the comments, all the posts and my replies and discussions from last week, take a look at those as well, because you all made some really good observations about why this paper is successful.